Welcome to another episode of The Full Life. We're really happy that you're joining us today. Today's show is all about inspiration, so you want to stick around for this one. And welcome back to The Full Life. Thanks for joining us today. We are so happy you did, and we hope that this boosts your fullness of life a little bit every episode. Of course, we always start with our encouraging word, so today's will come from Hank.
Hey everyone. So in the book of Acts, really we can call it Acts of the Holy Spirit, even though it's called the Acts of the Apostles. And there's so much in there to be inspired by in the book of Acts. Jesus goes up to heaven to get it perfect for us and promises the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit comes down and people are not only hearing the gospel in their own language, but they're able to receive, be baptized, and go back to their homes and help start the church, help birth the church, which you have this multicultural, multinational entity that's birthed even from the beginning. But one of the things that's been really encouraging me the last week actually comes in Acts chapter 4. In this chapter, Paul Peter and James actually had just healed a man at the temple. And after they healed him, he was praising and jumping up and down. And it's this beautiful story that reminds us when God does something, our job is to praise. But our job is also to share the gospel and share that story as well. So while they're doing this, they go to jail. The religious authorities do not like that at all. And after they go to jail, God intercedes and they come back. But when they come back, they go to their people, they go to their church, and they pray. And so the encouraging word is, when God does something, our work is to praise and worship. When God does something, our work is to tell people what God's done. And when God does something, our work is to pray. And I love how they prayed in Acts 4. And how they prayed is this, and I think this is a good way for all of us to pray, no matter what we're going through. One, they give thanks to who God is. They say, God, you're the creator, you're the maker of everything. Two, they recounted what God has done, that's sending Jesus and being thankful for all the things God has done for them and been faithful to them. Third, they said, God, this is a situation we're in where we're actually going to trust you. And then fourth, they said, you know what, God, not only are we going to trust you, we're going to rely on you to predict and to not even predict, but to give us the future that you want for us, right? So remembering who God is, giving thanks for what God's done, trusting God, and then looking to God for the future. So hope that's an encouraging word to you. If you find yourself in the book of Acts, there's so much in there to be encouraged, but one of the ways is to let us know that dance, when God does something, tell others, and always remember to pray.
Guess what? The encouraging words I don't think are going to stop there today, because as I said, this show is all about inspiration, inspirational stories, people, and ministries. And I'm so excited to talk about today's guest. Derek North is a singer, songwriter, and worship pastor of First Baptist Church of Davis in California. He and his wife live in that area with their 4 beautiful kids. Derek is also a stage 4 cancer survivor. And before he shares his story with us today, he originally shared it in a song. Take a look.
You are not alone. Keep fighting. I know it's as dark as the night, but I will stay with you through all of the fight. Never give up, never give up, and the sun will bring you all of its light.
I staring back at me empty and hollow, mouth full of spit that I can't seem to swallow, throat like a sunburned, Lord, I can't tolerate this, I hate this, I can't seem to escape this. I remember when the doctor said stage 4, gotta give it before it hits another lymph node. 35 radiation and then chemo, we about to unload a salvo on your face. Don't strap me to a table with a laser pointed at my head, a tube punching through my stomach, only way I'm getting fed. I'm only 37, I can't be the one with cancer broken in my bed, begging God for an answer, but you stand sure next to me, pray for me when I can't speak, sit with me in my misery and encourage me with your laughter, man. My mama told me just do the next thing, man. That's the way I'm making it, that's the way I'm fighting it.
You are not alone. Keep fighting. I know it's as dark as the night,
Please welcome to the show, Derek North. Hello, Derek. Thanks for joining us. And I had the privilege of talking with you before the show. It really just moved my spirit, and I can't wait to share this with other people as well. But let's start right at the beginning. You know, how did you find the Lord? Tell us about how you grew up and how you got into music.
Yeah. I grew up in Southern California. You know, my family weren't Christians growing up, and my sister started going in high school, so she brought me when I was in junior high, and just sort of gave my life freshman year of high school. And it was really quick right after that I got my first guitar, worked all summer to buy it, you know, started learning my first really chunky chords and trying to play with youth group and trying to play worship tunes really quick. Just music has always sort of been a central part of my life. Played saxophone for many years, and have just always been connected my faith through music. It was bad. It was real bad, but it was still it was a great place to cut my teeth and, you know, playing 90s worship tunes back in the day. So good. And I've really just been you know, doing worship music ever since.
Why did you make that decision, Derek? What moved you to make that decision?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Lord moves through summer camps. Camp ministry is a legitimate place where God shows up. And I had attended a summer camp right at my freshman year, and it was really impactful. And the Lord made himself very real to me, very clear to me at that camp. And it was, you know, when you feel the Holy Spirit moving, right? Like in the book of Acts, he pushes you and you just have to go. And it was a very obvious thing that I had to do, was to follow the Lord from thereafter.
How did your parents respond when you received the Lord?
You know, it was a challenging season. My father is not a Christian. My mom is. She came to faith after my sister and I. She had grown up in the church world, but never really locked into her faith as a child and walked away. So when my sister and I came to faith, it was honestly quite a challenge for her, I think, for a season. But it was through my sister and I that God reclaimed my mom's heart. And then she has been walking faithfully with the Lord for many years. She and I actually served in worship ministry together for a few years. When I was living in Monterey, she was playing on my worship teams. And so he actually restored very beautifully a musical relationship with my mom under the banner of faith, which is fantastic.
That's awesome that your mother got to play in your worship team. What did she play on the team?
She played piano for me for many years. It was fantastic.
That's fantastic. What an incredible thing, the way God redeemed that and that time with you guys. So you found the Lord, you got a guitar, you got some training, you started playing. But tell us a little bit more about your early career as a musician.
Yeah, so I started playing saxophone in 5th grade also. Just sort of played all the way through high school. And, you know, then started dabbling in guitar. Graduated high school. Whoa, what do you do? I play sax. I want to be a musician. What do you do? I'm going to go be a jazz player. You know, got into college in the jazz circuit and theory training and piano training. But I'm not a jazz player. And so I kind of just dropped out, failed out. I washed out as a jazz player. It's not in my blood. You know, the horn is in a closet somewhere collecting dust. And moved forward with, you know, writing. Writing is what I love to do. I love to write songs. So I was moving in that direction. Started writing songs in high school. As soon as I got my guitar that first summer, started writing songs. I've been writing songs for 25 years. And then, yeah, right after college, got in my first, I guess we played in a couple of garage bands, but got in my first serious band, did several recordings, played around California, you know, yada, yada. Did the band thing for a while, got married. You know, thought I wanted to get back into recording arts. And so I got a degree in recording music, but that's not what God had for me either. Of course, I've been playing in worship teams all of this time. The Lord sort of took a long time for me to find that path that God wanted for me, which was ministry. And I actually had resisted him for many years. So I've been walking the worship ministry road for a while, and God had been planting people saying, hey, have you ever thought about going into ministry? Have you ever thought about getting into ministry? I mean, just every few years. And I'd always reject it, saying, dude, I would always say, I know my heart, and you should never make someone like me a pastor. But then eventually God came down pretty hard on me when the Holy Spirit said, do you realize what you're saying? You're saying you don't believe I, Jesus, am capable of making you who I want you to be.
Right.
You're changing me. And I was like, what am I going to say to that? Like, okay,
Right.
I'm going into ministry. And I did. And now, I mean, I love it. You know, I love it. I wouldn't be doing anything else. And I thank God for that opportunity to be leading his church on a regular basis. But that's kind of the transition from my dream and, pursuit of doing musical things, specifically, trying to become an artist or owning my own recording studio or whatever it is, to God changing the path and getting me into full-time ministry.
I always love it when we try to tell God our plans. We put them in a box and go, no, that's not what I do. And, God's sitting there going, who made you? Who's got this thing under control? I wanted to talk, maybe you could share with us a little bit though, because in 2012, you did a worship album. Is that right? And then you left the church. Your faith was shaken. I mean, you had a lot going on there. So I guess my question is, did you continue to record music while you were in ministry? Because obviously I think you ended up heading that way into ministry, right? Did you keep doing worship or what did you do?
Yeah. So, so in 2012, right around that time, probably a little bit or earlier than that, I was going to write I was worship pastor at a church in Monterey and writing a big 15-song worship album. Is going to be like my first big thing. Record it all myself, play it all myself, edit it all myself, put the whole thing out there. And then my church really went through a difficult time. I would clarify and say I didn't walk away from the church. The church went through a difficult time, and it just wrecked me, for a while. I stayed within the church. The church kind of split. Myself and the youth pastor were basically holding the church together. We really felt like we were trying to be a tourniquet to the church, and people were bleeding out through our fingers and leaving. And so it was really faith shaking though, for sure. And so the project got put on a back burner. Then we ended up changing churches, having more children. The project kept getting put on the back burner. And then it started to change in the perception of my heart from I have this project that I'm working on to I have this project that I'm kind of failing at. And then I can't move on to something else because I've failed at this over here. You can't do something new because you failed at what was old. And then it changed even more into being more like, I am failing. I have failed because I didn't do what I had set out to do. So it really became a stone that blocked creativity in my heart. And it was about 2016. God gave me some fresh songs that were way out there. I put out a Christian hip hop album, and it was called Fresh Water because it was like the water that ate away the stone, blocking my creativity. It broke it free, and then fresh water, fresh creativity started coming out. And I released a single. I released Fresh Water EP. I was able to finish that worship project, salvage about 6 songs, and release it as an album called Lay a Soul Upon My Heart. And then I've been releasing music steadily since then. I've done a double worship album that came out in this last 2020 and 2021. A myriad of singles, Keep Fighting, which you heard. I did a score for an independent movie. It's been fairly consistent since 2016.
It sounds like you overcame a lot, and especially that feeling of failure or the creativity block, or I think a lot of people can relate to, being stuck. And so it's fun to hear about all the fruit that's come out of that. But I want to know if you can maybe share a little bit about, what happened after that initial 2016 block was lifted, about that even more challenging situation that you walked into and that you faced.
Yeah. 2016, put out that album. Put out Lay a Soul Upon My Heart. Right after that, 2017, I started developing this swelling in my neck right here. Doctors doing some digging found a giant tumor in the back part of my nose, in the nasopharynx, which is that space sort of above your throat, behind your nose. Big tumor. Turned out to be cancerous. Turned out to be stage 4 nasopharyngeal cancer. And it had already spread to these 2 lymph nodes, and your lymphatic system is connected through the body. And once it starts jumping the lymph node track, then you become terminal very quickly. So we caught it, I mean, just weeks before being terminal. And then the tumor that was discovered, it's behind this bone plate, right? You got this incredible bone structure to your face that God has created. Just buried in there behind all of this was that tumor. So it was inoperable. Most cancer patients, you go in, the MO is you go in, you cut out 95+% of the tumor, and then you use radiation and chemotherapy to treat the margins, to treat whatever remaining cells are still in there. That was not an option in my case. So I went through what my oncologist called some of the most aggressive cancer treatments that just sort of exist out there, because they had to burn and poison the tumor to death through chemo and through radiation. And so I received in total 9 chemotherapy treatments, very aggressive chemotherapy. I did 35 radiation treatments to my face right here over the course of 8 weeks, 7-8 weeks. And the whole treatment was, 6-7 months, and it just completely obliterated my body. I mean, it some people, can go through, chemo, and it's really hard, but you can keep going. You can go to work, even some things. I mean, I was bedridden. I was a lump on the log. I didn't move for months at a time. And, at the height of the symptoms, just to run you through a quick list. I mean, I lost my hearing completely because my ears had filled up with fluid as the tumor broke apart. I had completely lost my sense of taste, like the nerve endings stopped working in my tongue. The inner lining of my mouth and bottom lip had peeled off completely. The sides of my tongue split open. The top of my tongue lacerated and cracked as well. The back of my throat was sunburned, like you would get a sunburn, but it was inside my throat. The sides and back of my neck like peeled off, just so it was just open skin all in this area. I wasn't speaking, eating. I wasn't swallowing my own saliva, which had turned kind of this thick, sludgy stuff. I had a tube in my stomach that I was eating through. And through all of this, because of the chemotherapy, I mean, just incredible nausea through all of that was really difficult. Chemo port, where they would do the chemotherapy, because couldn't do it through the arm. It's too aggressive. It would have collapsed all of the circulatory system in your arm. It would kill the limb. And so they have to put it here, and the little catheter went over my collarbone into here, just dropped it into like my, the central highway of the body, just get it everywhere really fast. And then of course, all the effects of chemotherapy, permanent hearing damage, and just wrecked for months and months and months. And it was pure unending agony for so long time.
How was it? I mean, I can't even imagine that. But how was it emotionally? And then how was it spiritually going through that?
Well, I would say emotionally, it was incredibly difficult, specifically on my wife and my family. But for me, emotionally, the chemo knocked me out so bad. It was so aggressive that I hit a treatment and I just sort of went away for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. I didn't feel a lot of things, I mean, I did a little bit, but not as much as you would think, because it really just blasted my emotional center. So when I hit recovery, there was a mountain of emotions that I had to backlog through and process. Right. The trauma had come later on because I couldn't deal with it then. Mm-hmm. I was somewhat aware, but very minimally. I mean, I was terrified, but I was in constant agony, constant pain. And part of the chemo treatment was the 6-hour infusions once a month. But then for 3 of them, I received the small little pump that they kind of put in a fanny pack. It would leave plugged into my chest, and I'd go home with just a bottle of poisonous chemo, and it would just slowly pump for a week at a time. And so I would just live with constant medicine going in. For those weeks, I would be awake for 6 to 7 days. I just couldn't sleep. And so I was beginning to really lose all sense of my mind and everything, and begin to fear and panic. And I would end up in the hospital at the end of those. The second one, in the hours, the wee hours of the night, I couldn't talk, but I was screaming as loud as I could. I was screaming in my soul for Jesus to change anything, because it had been months of medicine and all of this stuff, but there was not one iota of relief. And, the sermons that I was hearing couldn't help me. The worship music that I was playing and leading couldn't help me. All the trappings of my church, all the social media Christianity, those arms were woefully short to reach down to the pit where I was to give me anything. And I was screaming at Jesus saying, where are you? If you say you're with me to the end of the age, what is going on and where are you? I can't find you. I am burning alive, and I can't even make sense of where you are. I completely feel abandoned. And in the second season of those week-long agonizing nights of insomnia, screaming at Jesus in my soul, he met me in a fresh way, and he said, I am here with you in the flames. And it was different. It was different than when a friend came to visit me. Amazing, incredible friends and family in church would come and sit with me on the couch, maybe walk if I could walk that day, because there were plenty of days that I couldn't. But it wasn't the same. See, they would sit there, but they don't know what I'm doing. They don't know what I'm going through. They can't physically experience the pain or the trauma or the fear or the emptiness. But the sense that Jesus gave to me, he said, I am in it with you. What you are experiencing, I am experiencing. The flames that are burning you are burning me. When Jesus says, I'm your high priest who knows your weaknesses and can sympathize with you, he was joining me and experiencing the pain and the fear and the trauma and the burning and the agony. And it made sense that only Jesus has arms the length needed to meet you in the deepest, agonizing, most pitiful pit ever. So when I made it to my third of those week-long treatments, I was more afraid than I ever have been in my life. I mean, I pleaded for Jesus to not let it happen, but I remember kind of banging my head on the bathroom wall, so scared, you're just sort of rocking and hitting my head against a wall, just praying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I remember thinking, but Jesus, I know where you are now.
Wow.
And I can go there because I know where you are. And if you meet me there, I'll go there. So I got these 4 kids. My littlest was 3 years old. I gotta finish this. We can't lose. So if you're gonna be there, I'll go there again. And I did. And it's just bad. It was bad. But he was there with me in the flames. And it was significant, to say the least.
It's a powerful image. And I think, on any level of trauma, I think people can relate to that. And the idea that Jesus is experiencing that with you, I just think is beautiful, because I think you're right. He's the one that can relate ultimately in that way that does give you some comfort, cold comfort when you're going through it physically, but you get Jesus at least in you and feeling that a bit. But, of course, we talk about physical aspects of chemo all the time and how wrecked you are physically, but that doesn't, even if you've overcome that, that's not necessarily the end of recovery, so to speak. There's a lot, as you started to mention, there's this whole amount of trauma that you go through going through these treatments.
Yeah, I suffered fairly significant PTSD when I was done with it all. And, I kind of went in some ways, out of the, I would say I'm not on fire anymore. But when I got in recovery, I was living just in a pile of burning coals. And that was just my life, was just burning coals for another year or more. I mean, my brain was scrambled eggs. I had very serious trauma triggers to the point where I would be, I mean, I would literally just lay over, shake and cry uncontrollably.
Wow.
Food related traumas, because of the eating thing. I found a pair of shoes that I wore in a chemo treatment, and I thought we had thrown them away, and I found them, and I just fell over crying. My daughter came in and she said, "Oh, these," and she said, "Can I just throw these away for you, Daddy?" And I just sort of shook my head like, "Please." And she ran as fast as her little 9-year-old legs could carry her out the door, threw them in the trash can, shut that door, and came back and gave me a hug. It was real trauma that affected me on a daily basis. And it took a lot of work, intense counseling, intense therapy, to work through those things. And the door to anxiety and depression, once it's open, remains at least ajar forever. And so, I mean, even just a few nights ago, my left arm shakes now. It never did, but it shakes when there's something going on, and I couldn't sleep, and my wife had to get up and help me and ground and come back so I could sleep. Like, trauma is still there. Retraining the brain is what has to happen. Your brain gets injured. That's what trauma is. Your brain gets injured and doesn't know how to handle it. And so these experiences get stashed away in your brain without a timestamp. So your brain does not know that this event was in the past. It's so big. I'm just get the file cabinet and close it. I don't know what that is. I don't want to talk about it. I want to deal with it. So your brain doesn't know if it's current or in the past or whatever. So for instance, I would be cooking scrambled eggs or cooking eggs in the morning, fried eggs. I ate that a lot, while I was still eating in treatment because it was soft and I could eat it. But the smell of eggs, trauma trigger, shaking, crying. But I love eggs. I don't want to not have eggs. I want eggs in a cup of coffee in the morning. I had to literally stand in front of my stove, cook some eggs, and say, I am not in danger. I'm just making eggs. I am not in danger. I'm just making eggs. And then I would throw the eggs away because I was sick to my stomach. I was sweating like I'm freaking out. Do it again. I'm not in danger. I'm just making eggs. Next morning, I'm not in danger. I'm just making eggs. Then I would be able to sit down at the table. Okay, I'm not going to eat it, but it's at the table. And then eventually I could actually start eating the eggs. And now my brain goes, oh, you're making eggs? Tasty breakfast. But the work of repairing and healing your mind is very different than healing the rest of your body.
Yeah.
And it's so often overlooked, and how long that takes. And we often say, oh, you're in recovery. Cool. You're good.
So many people, we're all in ministry and we hear these stories all the time, and you have to put your life, your challenges in perspective, right? I'm going to say this, I'm not promoting alcohol, but we call them champagne problems, and we want to complain about these champagne problems until you hear somebody who's had to take a faith walk that you've just went down. And it's so easy to talk to people about just walk in faith, trust God, until you're having to walk in faith and trust God. And then you realize, man, this is a really hard walk. It's not comfortable. It's not easy. I always say that the waiting period, the holding pattern is always the hardest part. I mean, you went through so much, and I would love to hear a little bit more about your faith walk, because to me, that right there is what's ministering, because there's a gamut of emotions. I'm sure some days you had really high faith and God was there and you felt him and you could taste him, everything you just said. There was other days I'm sure you were like, where are you? I mean, even Jesus himself said, where are you, God? Why hast thou forsaken me?
Psalm 23, when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me. But what we don't realize, it's a long walk out of the valley back to the top of the mountain. So I wish I could say I had a more cognizant faith challenge, but there was just a lot of dead space in my mind, in my emotions. But as I was sort of coming back online, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, there was a lot of people saying these things. Oh, I can't wait to see what God does in your life. Oh, this amazing thing that God has done. Oh, these great things. And I was like, well, I don't there's a lot of pressure to that. well, now I have to have great things that I do because God did this thing and I'm alive. And it was like, I'm just trying to eat eggs in the morning. Like,
Right.
I can't even handle your expectations for
Right.
my faith.
Wow.
And what I realized was I had changed as a person.
Okay.
I didn't know how, but I had changed. Jesus had it. He's the same. I was different, but I could not go back to the same exact life of faith that I had before because I was not the same person.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like, if you can, sort of imagine the stories that you've seen, or maybe of a couple who had been married for a long time. They sort of separated, fell apart, but then they sort of re-courted each other. They had to learn to fall in love again, and then they recommitted and they reconnected and saved their marriage. It was sort of along that same lines of, I had to figure out what it meant to be in a relationship with Jesus again.
Okay.
And he showed himself dramatically, like I had said. It wasn't like he was not there. But I was so significantly different that it took a long time. And I'm actively doing, as soon as I got better, as soon as I could, I was back to work. You need to get, back to work, lead worship, let's go, church. But through all of that, I was rediscovering my relationship with Jesus because I was different. And it took a long time.
Did worship take on a whole different meaning for you though now at this time when you step to do worship? Is it like at a whole different place than what it was before?
Well, I wouldn't say that it was at a whole different place, but there are specific songs or specific lyrics that ring differently. A lot of times worship songs are written wide enough in its concept that everyone can insert himself or herself into it and say, I can connect to God in my experiences through this lyric. But lyrics of suffering or lyrics of hard times, now they become very different and very real to me. Sometimes there's a song that says, when I was broken, you were my healer, and these things of healing, they come very fresh to me now. And they do become very different and very much more intimate because I can put my finger on when that happened.
With everything you've gone through, with the songs taking on new meanings, how did you find the creative juices this time? How did you not only start writing songs, but really finding a way to tell your story? Because I think that's the important thing, is that, God calls all of us to tell our stories, but then when you go through all that trauma, it's hard to find even your voice, right? How did you get to a level of like, I need to tell this story, or this is how I'm going to tell this story, or even why I need to tell this story? Sure.
I was deathly afraid that I would never sing, play, write music again. I was just, like I said, so physically obliterated. And it was the Easter after my treatment. I had seen a social media post by a good friend of mine, and it inspired me. I grabbed my guitar, first time, 6-8 months, barely play, kind of strumming some chords, croaking out a melody, started writing things down on a scratch piece of paper. And then I realized what I was doing. I was writing a song. And then once that awareness hit me, I just started sobbing on my bed. Because the Lord not only heals your body and your mind, but he heals your heart and your soul and your creative passions or your desires, and this was the Lord restoring what the locust had eaten away. It was giving back to Job what he took away. And I was just so incredibly thankful to have that again. I had connected with a good friend of mine named Bubba Norton, who co-wrote Keep Fighting With Me. And he was raised by his aunt and uncle who both passed away from cancer. And we had met together to just talk about life and cancer and what things are and how hard it is. And we started talking on this theme of yes, cancer warriors, but who are the cancer warriors? It's not just the patient, the person who had the diagnosis, but the warriors are also the family and the friends and the churches who support and sometimes physically keep alive those who are diagnosed with cancer. And we thought, wouldn't it be awesome to tell a story, tell a song written from both the patient and the caregiver's point of view? So that's what the song Keep Fighting was all about. And I remember when he pitched this idea, I was like, bro, I'm fresh out of treatment. Like, I can't, I don't know if I can write about this yet. I drove home from his house. I sat down on my piano as soon as I walked in the door, and I wrote the chorus. And it was just like, God was like, yep, downloading, here it is, chorus. And the other thing was, when I was sick, in the middle of my treatment, I had been wandering in the house in the middle of the night, aimlessly. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize myself. I pulled out my phone and I wrote down what are now the lyrics of the verse that I do, verse 2. I wrote those while I was in treatment. And so I tucked that away, just never thought anything of it. Started writing the song, and I grabbed those lyrics and I put it into the song, and they fit perfectly. I mean, it just boop, like a glove. It was just like God gave it then, and then God gave this now. They go together. And then my friend Bubba, he wrote his whole verse from the struggles of the caregivers, the guilt that they feel, the exhaustion that they feel, the underappreciated life that they live. And then we had another singer come and sing the chorus, keep fighting, keep going. And it's like the middle ground. You have this person struggling, you have this person struggling, but then you have this third voice of hope that says both sides keep going, keep fighting.
Why do I feel like I'm the one who's dying? I really want to be strong for you. It's hard when I'm always crying. At first it was all fire, determined eye of the tiger. And now I'm tore down and you're wore down and tired. Sometimes I can't tell if I'm even appreciated. Yeah, I know this ain't the time for me to state it. I'm just saying you're always sleeping. On top of that, you can hardly walk. And the chemo's got you sicker, man. You can hardly even talk. But I know you appreciate me. I can feel it when I hug you. And that's part of my motivation, man. I love you. I love you. I keep pushing because you keep fighting. And God put all the strength I'll ever need right here inside me. And when I feel like giving up, I look up. And pray to my healing God and have this situation shook up. We'll never give up hope. You're the strongest person I know. God is the knot you hold when you reach the end of your rope.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up the caregiver situation in addition to obviously the person that's, suffering and that's ill. I had a situation recently with my husband that many of the family here, know. It was definitely a champagne problem, as Carolyn mentioned, compared to what you have walked through, which has been so difficult. And so just even hearing about this, I can't even imagine, again, what you've gone through. But, when you have a spouse or someone that you're the caregiver for, they can't do anything. They can't, you're all of a sudden your mom and your dad and your chauffeur and you're the cook and you're the cleaner and you're everything. And, a lot of times people's attention and care goes to the person that's sick. But so often the caregiver goes to the side and they're so exhausted and they need that message of keep going. And like my experience again was so small, but it really gave me a heart for caregivers that deal with this, months on end, years that they're dealing with, or even, your year to 2 year situation, how your wife handled everything she had to do. And I'm so appreciative that you shared that side of the story, not just with us today, but in your music. And I know even that thing you mentioned about the pressure of people are like, oh, God's going to do something great with this. I have to step back as a pastor and think, how many times have I said that to people,
That's good.
We just believe that if somebody's going through something, God's going to use it for great. But, we sometimes don't know what to say, and that's maybe not the right thing. And yet I do know how much your story is going to impact so many people. So I want to thank you, first of all, for sharing it and for putting it in your music. I know you have more great music, and I would love for you to share some more with us. If you'd share something maybe from, I believe, a new album or a new song you've written.
This is Near the Cross. By am I so quick to fly from the hand that bled to give me life? Why do I still try and hide from the one that sees the dark as light? Yeah. You gave your life to draw me near, so I will wait right here near the cross. You welcome me by name near the cross. You cover all my shame near the cross. You comfort me in pain, so I will wait right here near the cross. So I will wait right here near the cross. Near the cross.
Derek, tell us what's next. Are you writing more stuff? What are you working on?
Working on a new single right now called Dawn in the Distance. I'm recording a saxophone solo. Not me playing it because I failed out. I got a fiddle player coming in, horn player coming in, laying down some tracks. We got a music video coming out for that at the end of the summer. Then I have a Christmas album recorded in the can, sitting on my desktop, just waiting to get mixed. Because every worship leader, you know, we feel like it's on our bucket list to get a Christmas album out there. So I'm gonna check that off my bucket list coming out, you know, for the next holiday season.
Well, we'll have to have you back for our big Christmas finale like we do over on this show. So we look forward to that album. Now let's talk about the fullness of prayer.
Honestly, I pray a lot in the shower because it's like, well, that's where I can get privacy. But for me personally, I have found that like I have to pray out loud because my brain cannot stay focused if I don't send the prayer through my mouth. And it's not a big elaborate thing. I just have to like talk out loud. It's almost like I'm talking to myself, but I know I'm talking in the spirit with the Lord. But otherwise, my brain is just all over the place, and I'm thinking about my to-do list or my job or my ministry or the blah, 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 or just whatever song is in my head. And I have to like sit there and talk out loud to the Holy Spirit. But I've also been learning to just be quiet also. And that's even more hard, to sit and say, Holy Spirit, I'm going to sit here and quiet myself for 30 seconds, for 1 minute, for 2 minutes, and just talk with me. And then I just, just keep forcing distracting thoughts out of my head and just sit for a little while, and then try to verbally strike up a conversation to keep my head in the game.
Look, we told you this day was going to be about inspiration, and I don't think we disappointed. There were so many little moments in Derek's story that could be just enough right there, but he had so much to give us today. I'm so grateful for your time. I'm so grateful for your ministry. I'm grateful for your music, Derek, and just keep allowing God to use you. Because that is how we get to the fullness of life, as we try to do every day here. So we'll see you next time on The Full Life.